The restaurant was one of those fancy places where the tables were covered in crisp white cloths and the silverware sparkled under soft lights. The kind of place where people came not just to eat but to be seen. On a busy Thursday afternoon, the main dining area was filled with the gentle hum of conversations, the clinking of glasses, and the occasional laughter. Among the diners was a woman named Madeline. She was dressed in a perfectly tailored outfit, her hair done just so, and she carried herself with a confidence that could feel almost suffocating to anyone nearby. She was used to people noticing her, admiring her, and agreeing with her. At a table near the window, Madeline sat with a friend, chatting about their week. The sunlight poured in, highlighting her gold watch and designer bag. As they talked, a waitress approached their table. Her name was Tiana. She was young, with a warm smile that reached her eyes, and she carried herself with a quiet pride. Every movement she made was careful, deliberate, yet graceful. She had a soft way of speaking that made even the briefest interactions feel personal. Tiana greeted Madeline and her friend, asking politely if they were ready to order. She had been working long hours lately, often skipping breaks to make sure her tips were enough to cover rent and bills. Despite the exhaustion, she made every customer feel valued. Today, however, she sensed that this table would be different. Madeline barely looked up as she waved a hand, giving orders in a tone that was more commanding than conversational. Tiana listened attentively, jotting down everything carefully. She smiled politely, even when Madeline's friend made a joke that seemed to mock the staff. Tiana had learned over the years to ignore the small indignities, the whispered comments, the rolling of eyes, and to treat everyone with respect no matter how they treated her. As she went back to the kitchen to place the order, Tiana felt a mixture of emotions. She had grown accustomed to dealing with people like Madeline, those who thought the world revolved around them. But there was always a small ache inside when she saw someone treat another human being with disdain, simply because of their job, their appearance, or the color of their skin. While Tiana worked, Madeline continued to chat and laugh, clearly enjoying the attention she received. She barely acknowledged Tiana's presence except when she needed something. To Tiana, it was just another afternoon, another set of tables, another set of people who saw her as invisible. But Tiana had learned to hold her dignity and carry herself with grace. That was her shield and her power. Minutes passed, and Tiana brought the dishes to the table with a polite smile. Madeline barely looked at her as she said, "It looks fine." Tiana nodded and retreated quietly. She knew that arguing or seeking approval was pointless. Her focus was on doing her job well, even when faced with indifference or rudeness. At the end of the meal, Tiana approached the table with the bill. She placed it carefully in front of Madeline, still smiling, though there was a faint trace of weariness in her eyes. Madeline glanced at the bill, then back at Tiana, and said in a tone that was more dismissive than anything else, "You don't need to bother with a tip." There was no warmth in her voice, no reason, no explanation, just a sentence that carried judgment. Tiana's heart sank for a moment, but she kept her expression neutral. She had faced rejection and rudeness before, and she had learned to accept it without losing herself. She nodded, keeping her voice calm, and replied, "Thank you, ma'am." Inside, though, she felt a flicker of sadness. She had spent hours on her feet, ensuring the food was served perfectly, the orders were correct, and the experience was smooth. To have it disregarded so casually stung, but she refused to let it show. Madeline and her friend left shortly after, laughing and chatting, oblivious to the quiet hurt left behind. Tiana returned to the kitchen, trying to shake off the moment, focusing instead on the next table. There were always more people to serve, more interactions to navigate, and more opportunities to show kindness in a world that often lacked it. As the afternoon continued, Tiana kept moving, taking orders, serving dishes, and offering polite smiles. Some customers were warm and appreciative, others indifferent, and a few rude. But through it all, she carried herself with the same steady grace, determined not to let anyone's prejudice diminish her spirit. After her shift, Tiana stepped outside, breathing in the crisp air. The day had been long, but she felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. Despite the dismissals, the ignored tips, and the casual cruelty of some customers, she had done her best. That was something no one could take away. As she walked toward the subway station, she thought about her small apartment, her plans for the evening, and the hope that tomorrow might be a little kinder. Meanwhile, Madeline drove away in her sleek car, completely unaware of the impact of her words. To her, it had been a simple refusal, a fleeting moment of judgment that would be forgotten as quickly as it passed. She had no idea that the young waitress she had dismissed would soon reappear in a part of her life she could never have imagined. The world has a way of surprising people, often when they least expect it. And for Tiana, life continued with its familiar rhythm of challenges and small victories. She didn't yet know that her path would soon cross again with the very woman who had judged her, and that this encounter would lead to a moment that neither of them could have foreseen. But for now, she carried herself forward, confident in her dignity, her skill, and her worth, unaware of the twist of fate that was quietly approaching. After leaving the restaurant, Tiana took the crowded subway home. She held onto the handrail, swaying gently as the train moved. Despite the long day and the rejection she had faced, she kept her head high. Her mind wandered to small things: her apartment, the dinner she planned to make for herself, and the phone call she needed to make to her younger brother to check on him. These simple thoughts gave her a sense of comfort. Life had its challenges, but she had learned to find small moments of peace in the chaos. Tiana lived in a modest apartment building in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers, and she took pride in keeping it clean and welcoming. She unlocked her door and stepped inside, immediately greeted by the faint smell of laundry detergent and the warmth of her home. Her apartment was small but cozy, with a little corner where she had set up a small table for reading and writing, and another corner near the window with a few potted plants she cared for. These simple touches made it feel like a sanctuary away from the stress of work. She made herself a cup of tea and sat by the window, looking out at the city lights as the sun dipped below the horizon. Her thoughts drifted to Ethan, the young man she had been seeing for a few weeks. He was kind and thoughtful, someone who listened more than he talked and who made her laugh in ways she hadn't in a long time. Their connection was gentle but real, and she felt comfortable around him in a way she didn't with most people. They had met through a mutual friend at a local coffee shop, and their conversations had flowed effortlessly from the first meeting. Meanwhile, in a large, elegantly furnished house across the city, Madeline was finishing her day in a completely different world. She reclined on a leather armchair, a glass of wine in her hand, talking on the phone with a friend about the lunch she had enjoyed. She described the restaurant, the food, and the staff, her voice full of self-assured judgment. To her, the experience had been slightly annoying because of the waitress, who she remembered clearly. But she shrugged it off, telling herself it was insignificant and that some people just didn't know their place. Back in her apartment, Tiana finished her tea and checked her phone. Ethan had sent a message asking if she wanted to meet for dinner later in the week. She smiled and replied quickly, her excitement hidden behind a casual tone. She liked how thoughtful he was, and even small gestures made her feel appreciated. As she set the phone down, she reflected on the fact that her life, though sometimes difficult, had small but meaningful joys. Moments like these reminded her that she was building something good for herself. No matter what others thought or how they treated her, the next few days passed in a familiar rhythm for Tiana. She worked her shifts, served tables with patience and grace, and returned home to her simple comforts. Each evening she would catch up on personal projects, write in her journal, or call her brother. Her life felt grounded even when the city outside seemed chaotic. And throughout it all, she carried the memory of the restaurant incident lightly, as a small reminder that not everyone would recognize her worth, but that didn't diminish it. Meanwhile, Madeline's life continued in its predictable luxury. She hosted social gatherings, attended events, and kept up appearances for friends and acquaintances. Yet there was a subtle emptiness in her routine. She valued status, possessions, and recognition, but the interactions she had often lacked the warmth or authenticity that Tiana experienced. Her life was full of activity but short on real connection. It was in this world that she would soon be confronted by someone who carried genuine grace, someone who would challenge her assumptions in ways she could not yet imagine. Ethan, who lived in a well-off household, decided it was time to introduce Tiana to his family. He knew his mother could be difficult, opinionated, and quick to judge, but he also trusted that Tiana's kindness and poise would leave a good impression. He mentioned it casually during a phone call, and Tiana agreed, a little nervous but also curious about meeting his family. She had no idea of the history that was about to surface, or how her simple dignity at the restaurant would intersect with this new chapter of her life. The evening of the planned dinner arrived, and Tiana dressed simply but elegantly. She wanted to show respect without trying too hard to impress. She left her apartment, feeling a mixture of excitement and nerves. The taxi ride to Ethan's home gave her time to reflect on what meeting his family would mean. She hoped for a pleasant evening, good conversation, and perhaps some warmth. But she also prepared herself for the possibility of judgment or discomfort. Still, her confidence in herself and her values gave her courage. At Ethan's family home, Madeline was busy in the kitchen, putting final touches on the table and arranging flowers. She liked to be in control of such settings, ensuring everything looked perfect. When Ethan announced that Tiana would be joining them for dinner, Madeline smiled politely but with a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. She did not know Tiana personally, but her son's choice intrigued her. She prided herself on having good taste in people, or at least believing she did. Yet something about her intuition made her pay closer attention, as though she had a faint memory nudging her subconscious. When Tiana arrived, she was greeted warmly by Ethan, who guided her into the house. She stepped inside, feeling the elegance and history of the home but also the subtle formality that came with it. She exchanged pleasantries with Ethan's father, who was kind but reserved, and then her gaze met Madeline's. For a brief moment, there was a flash of recognition in Madeline's eyes, though she quickly masked it with a smile. Tiana, unaware of the connection, returned the smile politely, projecting calm and warmth. The dinner began with casual conversation, stories about work, school, and shared interests. Tiana listened attentively, engaging naturally without trying to dominate the conversation. Her demeanor was calm, confident, and genuine. She laughed when appropriate and shared small anecdotes that were charming without being boastful. Other family members responded positively, appreciating her poise and kindness. Madeline, meanwhile, found herself observing Tiana more closely than she intended. There was something familiar about her, a subtle presence that stirred a memory she couldn't quite place. Tiana's manners and grace contrasted sharply with Madeline's expectations. Here was a young woman who had faced the world with resilience, who carried herself with dignity despite challenges, and who remained true to herself. Madeline's initial judgment from the restaurant seemed distant, yet it lingered in the background, waiting to surface. The evening moved on, conversations flowed, and yet a quiet tension built, unnoticed by most but palpable to the two women in subtle ways. It was a tension that would soon lead to a revelation neither could ignore, a moment where past actions and future connections would collide unexpectedly. By the end of the evening, Tiana felt a sense of relief and accomplishment. The dinner had gone well, the family had been welcoming, and she had navigated the situation gracefully. She had no idea that the memory of her previous encounter with Madeline at the restaurant was about to resurface, or how it would change the dynamics of her relationship with Ethan's family. She left the table feeling proud of her composure and hopeful about the possibilities ahead, unaware that the next moments would test her patience, dignity, and the quiet strength she had cultivated over the years. The night of the dinner arrived, and the house of Ethan's family seemed more imposing than Tiana had expected. It was an old, grand structure with polished floors, high ceilings, and walls lined with portraits of ancestors she had never met. She took a deep breath as she stepped onto the polished floor, feeling both awe and a hint of nervousness. The scent of fresh flowers and home-cooked food mingled in the air, adding warmth to the formal atmosphere. She adjusted her dress and smiled, reminding herself to focus on being polite and genuine. Ethan walked beside her, quietly reassuring her with a gentle squeeze of her hand. "You'll be fine," he whispered. "Just be yourself." Tiana nodded, grateful for his calm presence. She had learned over time that it was best to approach situations like this with quiet confidence, and Ethan's support gave her courage. In the living room, Madeline greeted them at the door. She was dressed impeccably, as always, her hair perfectly styled, her posture straight, and her smile polite. She extended her hand to Tiana, and Tiana took it, giving a soft smile. There was an instant sense of observation from Madeline's side, a subtle study that bordered on scrutiny. She felt as though she knew something about Tiana, though she couldn't immediately place it. Tiana, of course, noticed the gaze but did not let it affect her calm demeanor. She returned the smile politely, maintaining warmth and grace. Ethan's father, a quiet man with a gentle presence, stepped forward to greet Tiana. He shook her hand and offered a kind smile, welcoming her. Tiana responded warmly, appreciating the simple kindness. The initial introductions flowed smoothly, but Tiana could sense an undercurrent of tension from Madeline, subtle but perceptible. She focused on maintaining composure, answering questions with sincerity and engaging in light conversation. As they moved to the dining room, the table was set exquisitely, with silverware aligned perfectly, crystal glasses catching the light and plates that reflected care and attention. Tiana felt a mixture of admiration and anxiety. She was stepping into a world different from her own, a world of privilege and refinement. Yet she reminded herself that manners, grace, and kindness were universal. Dinner began with small talk. Madeline asked questions about Tiana's work, her hobbies, and her interests. Tiana answered politely, sharing enough to be engaging but not too much to seem boastful. She spoke about her work as a waitress, mentioning that she enjoyed connecting with people and learning from different experiences. She carefully omitted the painful memory of the previous lunch, choosing instead to focus on the present and on building a positive impression. Madeline, however, could not help but feel a flicker of recognition. There was something about Tiana's voice, the way she moved, her calm confidence that nagged at her memory. She tried to dismiss it, attributing it to her imagination, yet the feeling persisted. Madeline was accustomed to control and certainty, but this subtle unease made her slightly uncomfortable. The conversation moved to lighter topics. Tiana shared stories from her life, some humorous and some reflective. She spoke about small victories, moments of kindness she had encountered at work, and her aspirations for the future. Her words were genuine, spoken from the heart, and Ethan's family responded with interest and warmth. They were clearly impressed by her demeanor, her intelligence, and her ability to engage effortlessly. Ethan watched quietly, pleased with Tiana's grace under pressure. He knew that his mother could be challenging, that her judgments were often quick and her opinions firm.
Yet he had faith in Tiana's ability to navigate the evening with dignity.
He also felt a quiet pride, seeing Tiana interact with his family with such composure, grace, and authenticity. As the main course was served, conversation turned to stories from Ethan's childhood. Tiana listened attentively, laughing at the humorous anecdotes, asking questions with genuine curiosity. Her ability to engage sincerely without pretense was evident, and it began to soften the formality of the evening. The atmosphere, initially rigid and polished, started to feel warmer, more human, and alive with subtle connections. It was during this part of the dinner that the recognition fully struck Madeline. Ethan mentioned a story casually about a young woman who had served him lunch at a restaurant recently. He laughed about a small incident, a minor mix-up with an order, and how the young waitress had handled it with professionalism. Madeline's fork paused midway to her mouth, her eyes widening slightly. She felt a sudden rush of realization. This was the same waitress from the lunch where she had refused to tip. The memory came flooding back, vivid and uncomfortably sharp. For a moment, Madeline's composed exterior faltered. She glanced at Tiana, who was smiling politely, unaware of the connection. The room seemed to hold its breath, though no one else could sense the internal recognition that had struck Madeline so forcefully. Tiana, as always, remained poised, focused on the conversation and on maintaining a pleasant atmosphere. Madeline's mind raced. She thought about the lunch, her own dismissive words, and the small moment of judgment she had made without thinking. A mix of emotions surged through her: embarrassment, discomfort, and an unexpected sense of humility. She had always seen herself as composed and in control, yet here was a moment that unsettled her, reminding her that actions had consequences and that people could not be judged so easily. Tiana continued the conversation, speaking about her passions, her goals, and her family. She shared small stories about helping her younger brother with his studies, and about moments at work where she had learned something meaningful. Her humility and sincerity shone through in her words and expressions, creating a stark contrast to Madeline's earlier assumptions. The family members listened intently, clearly impressed by Tiana's character. The evening progressed, and the subtle tension between Madeline and Tiana became a silent undercurrent. Madeline attempted to regain her composure, smiling and engaging in polite conversation. But the realization lingered. She was confronted with a living example of dignity, grace, and strength, the very qualities she had dismissed in a fleeting, superficial judgment. Tiana, unaware of the full extent of Madeline's recognition, remained composed, focused on connecting and being herself. As dessert was served, the conversation lightened. Laughter filled the room and the previous tension eased slightly, replaced by curiosity and observation. Madeline found herself paying more attention, noting Tiana's patience, thoughtfulness, and the subtle ways she engaged with everyone. It was a quiet lesson in humility, a reminder that character was often more important than appearances or status. Ethan's father made a light-hearted joke about his son's choice in friends and relationships, causing everyone to laugh. Tiana responded naturally, showing wit and charm without arrogance. Her ability to navigate the social nuances of the evening impressed even the more critical family members. Madeline, meanwhile, felt a pang of awareness, realizing that the young woman she had underestimated possessed qualities that went far beyond superficial judgments. After dinner, the group moved to the living room for coffee. Tiana helped clear a few dishes, still engaging politely with everyone. Madeline, observing her actions, could not help but notice her efficiency and thoughtfulness. Every movement was deliberate yet unobtrusive, showcasing a balance of grace and capability. It was clear to Madeline that Tiana's composure was not a facade, but a reflection of inner strength and character. The evening drew to a close, and Ethan walked Tiana to the door. He thanked his parents and Madeline for the dinner, and she responded with polite formality, still grappling with her internal recognition of Tiana. As the door closed behind Tiana, Madeline sat down, reflecting on the evening. She realized that her previous judgment at the restaurant had been shallow and unfair. Tiana had shown qualities that were admirable, human, and deeply respectable. Madeline could not ignore the lesson she had received through this unplanned encounter. Tiana walked home under the night sky, feeling content. The dinner had gone well, the family had been welcoming, and she had maintained her dignity and composure throughout. She reflected on how life had a way of bringing people into unexpected situations, where grace, patience, and authenticity could leave lasting impressions. She had faced her first encounter with Ethan's family with humility and poise, and it had paid off. The evening had reinforced her belief in the importance of being true to oneself, regardless of others' opinions or judgments. As Tiana entered her apartment and set her bag down, she allowed herself a quiet moment of satisfaction. She had navigated the evening successfully, remained respectful, and connected with people she had never met before. The world outside might be challenging, full of judgment and unexpected obstacles, but Tiana had proven once again that her dignity and character could withstand these moments with grace. Meanwhile, Madeline reflected on her own actions and assumptions. She had been confronted with a stark reminder that appearances could be deceiving, and that character often went unseen until tested. Tiana's presence in her home, even briefly, had left a mark. Madeline was forced to acknowledge that her past actions had been shallow, and that life had a way of teaching lessons in humility and awareness. The night ended quietly, with both women in their separate spaces, unaware of the full extent of the connection that had just formed. One calm and reflective, carrying herself with strength and dignity. The other humbled and thoughtful, confronted with the realization that judgment could be premature and unfair. And somewhere in the middle, Ethan observed the subtle dynamics, grateful for Tiana's grace and perhaps silently relieved that his mother's recognition, though uncomfortable, had not overshadowed the evening entirely. The story of the evening was not in loud confrontations or dramatic revelations, but in the quiet moments of observation, reflection, and realization. Tiana's natural warmth and composure had left a lasting impression, while Madeline's assumptions had been challenged in ways she could not have predicted. The night ended with a sense of anticipation, the quiet knowledge that life had a way of weaving connections, lessons, and surprises that could not be ignored. Both women, in their separate ways, were forever changed by the subtle power of dignity, grace, and human understanding. The next morning, Madeline woke with a lingering unease she couldn't shake. The previous evening's dinner had stirred something in her, a recognition that the world was larger than her assumptions, and that people could surprise her in ways she never expected. Tiana's calm composure and sincere warmth were images that replayed in her mind, highlighting the contrast between judgment and character, arrogance and dignity. She moved about her luxurious home, making tea and scrolling through her messages, but the thoughts of Tiana kept resurfacing. She wondered how someone so young could carry themselves with such quiet strength and grace. Meanwhile, Tiana was starting her day with the usual routine, a combination of chores, breakfast, and checking in on her younger brother. The city was already alive with movement, and she felt the familiar rhythm of life pressing forward. Yet the memory of last night's dinner was still fresh in her mind. She reflected on the way she had managed the social dynamics, staying composed and genuine, and how it had felt good to be accepted by Ethan's family. She was unaware that Madeline had been silently analyzing every move she made, nor did she know how her presence had unsettled someone who had once judged her unfairly. The week continued with the usual pace of life. Tiana moved from one shift to the next, engaging with customers and colleagues, always carrying herself with a sense of quiet dignity. She noticed small gestures of kindness from strangers and found joy in these fleeting moments. Her brother's laughter, a phone call from a friend, a simple compliment from a regular customer, all these moments reinforced her sense of self-worth. The experience with Ethan's family became a quiet inspiration, reminding her that her integrity and calm strength could leave impressions far beyond her immediate surroundings. Madeline, on the other hand, found herself caught in a cycle of reflection. She replayed the moments from the dinner repeatedly. The way Tiana had laughed at an anecdote, the polite but confident manner in which she answered questions, the small gestures that showed thoughtfulness without effort. Madeline's pride often overshadowed her empathy, but now she felt an unfamiliar sense of humility. It was not pleasant, but it was necessary. She could no longer ignore the reality that her judgments at the restaurant had been shallow, and that Tiana's character had far exceeded what she had imagined. On a Thursday afternoon, Tiana returned to the same restaurant where the initial incident had occurred. She worked her shift with her usual diligence, serving plates, taking orders, and offering a polite smile to every customer. The memory of Madeline rejecting her tip seemed distant, almost irrelevant as she focused on the present. She knew that life often brought challenges, but she had learned to navigate them with patience and composure. The work was exhausting, yet she carried herself with a sense of purpose that no amount of dismissiveness could diminish. That evening, Ethan called Tiana with excitement in his voice. He had invited her to attend a casual gathering with a few friends, assuring her that it would be relaxed and friendly. Tiana agreed, eager to spend time with him outside formal settings. She prepared herself simply, choosing comfort and elegance without overthinking the impression she would make. She walked to the venue, feeling a mix of anticipation and calm confidence, ready to enjoy the evening without expectation or judgment. Madeline, meanwhile, had been invited to the same gathering through a mutual acquaintance. She agreed to attend with a sense of curiosity and cautious optimism. The chance to observe Tiana again, without the constraints of a formal dinner, sparked a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Madeline found herself reflecting on her own behavior, aware that her previous dismissal had been both unkind and short-sighted. The gathering promised not just social interaction, but an opportunity to reconcile her own perceptions with reality. As Tiana arrived at the gathering, she was greeted by laughter, casual conversation, and a relaxed atmosphere. She moved easily through the room, engaging politely and sharing stories with friends she had not yet met. Her demeanor was warm, approachable, and genuine. She laughed freely, her energy light yet sincere, creating a welcoming environment for those around her. It was evident to everyone present that she was comfortable in her own skin, unpretentious and kind-hearted. Madeline entered shortly after, noting Tiana's presence immediately. Her eyes met Tiana's, and for the briefest moment, there was a recognition, a silent acknowledgement of the previous encounter and the contrast it had revealed. Madeline felt a pang of embarrassment and humility, realizing that her earlier judgments had been superficial. Yet she also felt a reluctant admiration for Tiana's ability to navigate social interactions with ease and grace. Tiana, as always, remained unaware of the specific thoughts running through Madeline's mind, focusing instead on enjoying the gathering and connecting authentically with those around her. The evening unfolded with lively conversation, laughter, and shared stories. Tiana moved through the crowd with ease, offering thoughtful comments and showing genuine interest in the experiences of others. Her ability to engage without pretense drew people toward her, creating a sense of connection that was both natural and inviting. Madeline observed quietly, noting the impact Tiana had on the group. She began to understand that respect, kindness, and authenticity often carried far more weight than social status or outward appearances. At one point, a conversation arose about challenges faced in the workplace. Tiana spoke candidly, sharing experiences of dealing with difficult customers and maintaining professionalism under pressure. Her words were measured and insightful, demonstrating resilience and a positive outlook. The group listened intently, clearly impressed by her perspective and composure. Madeline felt a subtle shift within herself, recognizing the gap between her own judgments and the reality of Tiana's character. She felt both humbled and enlightened, an unusual combination that left her thoughtful and introspective. Later in the evening, Ethan subtly introduced a story about a humorous incident at a local restaurant. As he recounted it, Tiana laughed naturally, the room echoing with the sound of genuine amusement. Madeline's attention sharpened, her memory aligning with the details of the story. She realized that Tiana was indeed the same person she had encountered weeks earlier, the waitress she had dismissed so casually. The realization hit her with clarity, forcing her to confront the impact of her actions and the disparity between her assumptions and reality. Despite the recognition, Tiana continued to interact with warmth and poise, entirely unaware of the internal turmoil Madeline was experiencing. The contrast between Tiana's composed demeanor and Madeline's private reflection highlighted the lesson unfolding in subtle human terms. Tiana's authenticity and grace became a mirror, reflecting the importance of dignity, respect, and empathy in every interaction. Madeline could not ignore the message, and the experience left a lasting impression. As the gathering drew to a close, Tiana felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. She had participated fully, maintained her composure, and connected authentically with those around her. The evening had reinforced her belief that character, kindness, and dignity transcended social barriers and superficial judgments. She left with a sense of satisfaction, unaware of the depth of the impact she had made on Madeline, whose pride had been tempered by reflection and recognition. Madeline, on her way home, found herself thinking about Tiana repeatedly. She recalled the moments of genuine connection, the warmth and the quiet confidence that had so clearly distinguished Tiana from the superficial judgments she had made. It was an unsettling but necessary experience, reminding her that life often held lessons that could not be ignored. She realized that humility, awareness, and empathy were as important as social standing, wealth, or appearance, and that her assumptions had failed to capture the truth of Tiana's character. The days that followed were quiet, yet reflective for both women. Tiana continued her work, her personal life, and her relationship with Ethan, grounded in the principles of dignity, kindness, and authenticity. Her life moved forward, marked by small victories, moments of connection, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she remained true to herself. Madeline, in turn, continued her routines with a subtle shift in perspective, carrying the awareness of Tiana's character and the lessons of humility, empathy, and recognition into her daily life. This unfolding narrative was not marked by dramatic confrontations or loud declarations, but by the subtle interplay of human character, personal growth, and reflection. Tiana's integrity and composure served as a quiet reminder of the value of dignity and authenticity. Madeline's journey through recognition and humility illustrated the power of awareness, empathy, and reflection in shaping human understanding. Together, these experiences set the stage for future encounters, where the lessons of respect, grace, and connection would continue to influence the lives of both women in ways they had yet to fully comprehend. The story of this part of their lives emphasized the quiet, human-centered power of character, and the ways in which dignity and kindness can leave lasting impressions. It revealed that recognition, understanding, and humility are often the result of subtle interactions, observations, and reflections. Both Tiana and Madeline, in their respective journeys, were learning to navigate the world with greater awareness, respect, and humanity. The unfolding events highlighted that real-life encounters, even those that begin with judgment or misunderstanding, could evolve into lessons of empathy, growth, and authentic connection. As time passed, the threads of their lives continued to weave together in unexpected ways. Tiana remained steadfast in her values, her grace and composure evident in every interaction. Madeline's reflections led her to reconsider her assumptions, her judgments tempered by the recognition of Tiana's true character. Both women, through their separate yet intersecting experiences, demonstrated that human understanding, dignity, and respect are often cultivated through observation, reflection, and the quiet lessons life presents. This part of the story, rich with human interaction, personal growth, and subtle revelation, underscored the transformative power of grace, empathy, and authentic connection in everyday life. Weeks passed, and the connection between Tiana and Ethan grew stronger. They spent more time together, sharing quiet moments, long walks in the park, and evenings at small cafes where conversation flowed easily. Tiana's life, though still full of work and responsibilities, felt lighter with Ethan by her side. She carried herself with the same quiet strength and dignity, but there was an added warmth in her smile, a reflection of the happiness and comfort she found in their companionship. Each day brought small victories, laughs shared, stories exchanged, and subtle moments of understanding that deepened their bond. Madeline, in contrast, found herself reflecting more often on her actions and attitudes. The memory of Tiana's composure, the dinner, and the gathering played over in her mind repeatedly. It was a lesson in humility that she could not ignore. She realized that her earlier dismissal at the restaurant had been unfair and shallow, an act of thoughtlessness that had no bearing on Tiana's true character. Madeline began to notice the value of empathy, awareness, and the power of character over superficial appearances. She started to consider her actions more carefully, understanding that respect and kindness were not bound by social class or wealth. One evening, Ethan invited Tiana over to his house to meet a few of his friends in a casual setting. Tiana, feeling confident yet composed, agreed. She arrived wearing something simple yet elegant, her posture and demeanor reflecting calm confidence. As she stepped into the familiar space, she felt the warmth and friendliness that characterized Ethan's household, a sharp contrast to the judgment and rigidity she had once faced from Madeline. She engaged with the friends, listened attentively, and contributed with genuine interest. Her natural charm and authenticity shone through, creating an inviting and relaxed atmosphere. Madeline, who had also been invited, entered the room with cautious curiosity. She observed Tiana from across the room, noting her ease, warmth, and composure. The previous recognition that had unsettled her now settled into a quiet respect. Madeline realized that her assumptions about people could be flawed, and that character was often revealed through action, demeanor, and interaction rather than appearance or status. She silently acknowledged Tiana's qualities, understanding that she had underestimated her entirely. As the evening progressed, conversation flowed freely. Tiana shared anecdotes from her work, insights from her life experiences, and thoughtful reflections on challenges she had faced. She spoke with humility yet confidence, engaging those around her and fostering a sense of connection. Ethan's friends responded with warmth, curiosity, and appreciation, drawn to Tiana's natural ability to create rapport. Her presence had a calming, inclusive effect, bridging gaps between people who might otherwise remain distant. During a break in conversation, Ethan's mother, Madeline, approached Tiana with a polite but tentative smile. The tension from previous encounters had softened into something quieter, reflective, and observant. Madeline took a deep breath and spoke, her voice steady but carrying a subtle vulnerability. She commented on how poised and thoughtful Tiana had been throughout the evening, acknowledging the grace and composure she had displayed. Tiana, unaware of the full depth of the remark, responded warmly, appreciating the acknowledgement without judgment or resentment. The moment was quiet yet profound. Madeline realized that recognition and respect could coexist with humility, and that it was never too late to acknowledge the value of another person. Tiana's response, gentle and dignified, underscored her innate strength and capacity for empathy. The exchange, subtle as it was, reflected the transformation occurring within both women, the evolution of understanding, the bridging of divides, and the recognition of shared humanity. As the night drew to a close, Tiana and Ethan prepared to leave. They had enjoyed the evening, deepened their connection, and navigated social dynamics with ease. Tiana felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, not in proving herself to anyone, but in remaining authentic, composed, and kind throughout the interaction. Her dignity, patience, and grace had allowed her to connect meaningfully with people from different walks of life, leaving a lasting impression without arrogance or pretension. Madeline returned to her home, contemplating the evening. The realization that her previous judgments had been unfair weighed on her, but it was accompanied by a growing understanding of the value of empathy, respect, and genuine observation. She reflected on the ways in which life offered lessons in humility, often through unexpected encounters. Tiana's character had provided her with a mirror, showing the power of grace, dignity, and authenticity in a way that could not be ignored. Madeline felt a subtle shift within herself, a quiet but meaningful transformation that would influence her interactions moving forward. The days and weeks that followed were marked by continued interactions and subtle growth for both women. Tiana remained focused on her work, family, and relationship with Ethan, navigating her life with composure and quiet confidence. She continued to encounter challenges, but each was met with resilience and dignity. Her experiences with Ethan's family, and the lessons embedded in her interactions with Madeline, reinforced the importance of authenticity, patience, and kindness in every interaction. Madeline, meanwhile, began to adjust her behavior and perceptions in both personal and professional spheres. She approached interactions with greater awareness, humility, and empathy, recognizing that respect and understanding could foster meaningful connections. The lessons she learned from Tiana's example were not just reflections of the past, but guides for her future conduct. She began to notice the impact of her actions, understanding that even small gestures or judgments could carry weight and influence. A few weeks later, Tiana and Ethan were walking together in the park, enjoying the quiet of the evening. The city around them buzzed with life, yet they found solace in each other's presence. Their conversation flowed easily, punctuated with laughter, shared observations, and thoughtful reflections. Tiana spoke of her aspirations, small victories, and the value she found in simple, meaningful experiences. Ethan listened attentively, appreciating the depth of her character and the authenticity she brought to every interaction. In a separate part of the city, Madeline attended a social event, more mindful and aware of her surroundings. She engaged with others politely and attentively, noticing details, listening more, and speaking less impulsively. She reflected on her past behaviors and the lessons she had learned from observing Tiana. Her transformation was quiet but profound, shaped by recognition, reflection, and the understanding that character and dignity often speak louder than appearances or social standing. One afternoon, Madeline found herself thinking about the day at the restaurant weeks ago, and the woman she had dismissed so casually. The memory no longer carried irritation or judgment, but a sense of perspective. She realized that every person had a story, a set of values, and an inner strength that could not be judged superficially. Tiana's example had shown her the power of humility, empathy, and composure, teaching her that genuine human connection transcends social divisions. Tiana continued to thrive, her relationship with Ethan growing deeper and more meaningful. They shared experiences, supported each other, and celebrated small moments of joy and accomplishment. Her integrity, patience, and kindness became a foundation for the relationship, allowing both of them to navigate life with mutual respect and understanding. The lessons embedded in her character were evident in her interactions, leaving lasting impressions on those around her, including Ethan's family and friends. Madeline's life also continued, enriched by newfound awareness and humility. She approached her interactions with thoughtfulness, reflecting on the impact of her words and actions. The recognition of Tiana's character had become a guiding force, reminding her of the value of empathy, understanding, and respect. Each day presented opportunities for continued growth, reflection, and the building of meaningful connections. Months later, Tiana and Ethan decided to host a small dinner at their apartment, inviting close friends and family. The atmosphere was relaxed, warm, and inviting. Tiana moved through the space with natural ease, engaging guests with authenticity and warmth. Madeline attended as a guest, observing Tiana's composure, kindness, and genuine connection with everyone present. The earlier tensions had transformed into a quiet respect, acknowledgement, and understanding. During the evening, Madeline took a moment to speak with Tiana privately. She offered a sincere comment, acknowledging the grace, composure, and authenticity that Tiana had displayed throughout their encounters. Tiana responded with warmth, accepting the acknowledgement with humility and kindness. It was a subtle yet profound moment, reflecting the transformation in both women and the lessons learned through reflection, empathy, and human interaction. The evening concluded with laughter, shared stories, and a sense of connection that transcended social boundaries. Tiana and Ethan felt a quiet contentment, knowing that their interactions had fostered understanding, respect, and genuine connection. Madeline, reflecting on the evening, recognized the enduring impact of humility, awareness, and the acknowledgement of character in shaping meaningful relationships. In the days that followed, Tiana continued her life with calm confidence, embracing challenges and victories alike. Her interactions were guided by integrity, dignity, and kindness, leaving positive impressions wherever she went. Madeline maintained her journey of reflection and growth, navigating social and personal spheres with greater empathy and awareness. Both women had experienced subtle yet profound transformations, learning that respect, understanding, and authenticity are often the most powerful forces in human interaction. The story's conclusion did not rely on dramatic confrontations or sudden revelations, but on the quiet, human-centered evolution of character, awareness, and understanding. Tiana's innate dignity, patience, and grace highlighted the strength of authenticity and composure, while Madeline's journey reflected the transformative power of humility, reflection, and empathy. Through their intersecting experiences, both women learned valuable lessons about respect, connection, and the enduring impact of human character. Life continued, each day presenting opportunities for growth, connection, and reflection. Tiana and Ethan's relationship flourished, founded on mutual respect, trust, and understanding. Madeline approached her world with a renewed sense of awareness, mindful of the lessons learned and the value of character over superficial judgment. The experiences shared, observed, and reflected upon created a lasting impact, emphasizing that true understanding and connection often emerge through quiet observation, reflection, and the acknowledgement of dignity and grace in others. Ultimately, the story underscored the enduring importance of empathy, integrity, and authentic human connection. Tiana's composure, warmth, and dignity left a lasting impression on those around her, teaching the subtle yet powerful lessons of patience, resilience, and authenticity. Madeline's journey through recognition, reflection, and humility demonstrated that personal growth often arises from unexpected encounters, fostering awareness, empathy, and a deeper understanding of human character. Together, their experiences illuminated the transformative power of respect, kindness, and genuine connection in shaping lives, relationships, and perspectives.